فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب.
الحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So in our last couple classes, we went over what the Salah is composed of, and some of of course we talked about the pillars, and then we also talked about some of the sunan and the hayat, which are like the beautifiers of the Salah. And we talked about some of the scenarios that we would do if someone is in Salah and then they forget something. How do they do that? And so that was covered in the last class. And also there's a few times that someone is not allowed to come up with a prayer or to pray inside of these times. And we talked about that these is for prayers that don't have a reason for it. So like if it's just like a prayer, say someone wants to do istikhara, this is a reason that that doesn't come before the prayer. So if it doesn't have a reason that comes before the prayer, then this is a time that someone wouldn't just go and pray any prayer. But in general, it's a time of prohibition. And then we also talked about we talked about these times, and also if somebody enters the masjid at these times that it's like prohibited to pray at these times. If someone enters the masjid or in this time, then this is a reason for them to pray in this time, and there's no problem with them praying even if it's during the sunrise, or it is at the other time after Asr or something, someone comes in before Maghrib, then they can pray, and there's no problem with that. And so the next thing that the author is going to go into is another chapter that has to do with the prayer, and this is the prayer in congregation. And so we'll talk about some of the rulings, inshallah, with the prayer in congregation, and when we are when we're either being led by someone else in the prayer, what we need to know, as well as the ruling in general for the person praying in congregation, and also for the people that are leading the prayer. We'll talk just a little bit about this. We're not going to go, like the author here doesn't go into great detail in that part. But in general, he says here, Abu Shujaa, he says, Faslun, rahimahullah, he says, Faslun wa salatul jama'ati sunnatun mu'akkadatun. And so the first thing he says here is that Salah in congregation is a very important sunnah. He says sunnatun mu'akkada, and this is of those, a lot of times they'll use this mu'akkada, which is something that's very, very, very highly emphasized. And this is because a lot of the scholars, looking at the evidences, they see that some of them have debated, is it something that's obligatory or is it something that is sunnah? And from these, and from all of these different evidences of them, is that the Prophet ﷺ, when he was in battle, he was still commanded, and we have the Salatul Khawf, which that Allah commands for them to pray in this different fashion, but still pray together. And like they're still praying together even while they're at war. And of course, if someone's in the middle of like a battle with like swords and whatnot, then they pray we'll talk about this, but they pray in the way that they are right there while they're fighting, But the fact that they would still pray together while they're in a war, like a war environment, this is something that shows that praying together is very, very important. But of the evidences that show that this is something that is sunnah and it's not actually like obligatory, of these evidences is what the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Salatul Jama'ati taftulu Salatul Fadli bi sab'in wa ishrina darajah. And so he says here that the salat in Jama'ah, which is congregation, it's better, taftulu, that it's better than the salat when someone is by themselves by like 28 levels. And so of course this is something that we can take, we can understand, like if something is better than something else, then that other thing has goodness to it. And so this is kind of the understanding that that the scholars will take from the different hadiths that come in this way, that this is better than this. Then we would say, okay, the original thing is not blameworthy, but rather someone is missing out on a great reward. And this is the view for the individual. This is something that's sunnah, and sunnah mu'akkada, and in that it's very important for the individuals to do this. And in regards to the community, this is something that is fardu kifaya, that a lot of the scholars in the Shafi'i method, they talk about that this is something that people need to pray the or like they need to pray in jama'ah, in congregation, and this is something that's fardu kifaya for the men specifically that are residents. And because this is of the Sha'a'ir Islam, and so this is important for the people to understand that there should always be some type of and the people that do go and pray in one of these places and whatnot, then they're accomplishing a fardu kifaya, which is something that must be done by the community. And this is there's many evidences for this as well. We won't go into all of them, but in general, it's something that as a Muslim, this is very important for the Muslims to pray together, and this is something that brings together the hearts of the Muslims. And of the things that Abu Darda, one day he was found when he was very angry, and this is mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari, that he was very angry, and someone came and then someone came and asked him, was like, what has made you angry? And he was upset because people were leaving the Jama'ah, and he said that the only thing I know from the companions, or like from the Muslimin, is that they pray in Salat, they pray Salat in Jama'ah and in congregation. And this was one of the things that made him very upset when he saw that people were leaving the congregation, and this of course is something that is very important for us to do our best to do, is to pray the prayer in congregation, of course. And in general, if someone were to say that this is something that's obligatory for like certain individuals and whatnot, then on this view, there are some things that would like give someone an excuse, such as like if they're sick, or if they're not they're not around a masjid and whatnot, or if they couldn't hear the like if they were in a place where if someone was giving the adhan, they can't necessarily hear the adhan, so they don't need to go out of all of their way to go there. But if they're in a place where they're around it, then this is something that they would be called to do that. And so this is the prayer in congregation. It's very important, as he says. And the next thing he says here, وَعَلَى الْمَأْمُومِ أَنْ يَنْوِيَ الْإِتِمَامِ, in that it is for the person who is being led in the prayer, he needs to intend and dun al-imam, that he is following the imam. Like this is something that he needs to intend, that he's following the imam. And also this is that intention, he says here, dun al-imam. And this is something that is that the imam himself, say a person is praying, and then someone comes up to him and he makes this person an imam, like this other person who's following, taps him on the shoulder, he comes on the right side, and then he wants to pray with this guy. So if the imam doesn't have the intention or the niyyah, then this person that's following him, it's okay for this person. This person is still following it. His intention for following doesn't revolve around whether or not the imam has the intention to lead him in the prayer. And so then the imam, if he wants to get the reward for this, then, or that person who's been made the imam, if he wants the reward from it, he needs to intend from that point, oh, I'm leading this person. So he needs to have the intention, of course, because إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that all of these, all of the rewards are based on the intention. So of course, if the imam wants this reward, then he needs to intend. And also the imam, before, if he's leading people, of course, having the intention that he's the imam is the way that he's going to get the reward for praying in jama'ah. But if he doesn't have that intention, then he won't get that reward from that hadith. And so this is, he says here, the person being led in the prayer needs to intend that he is following the imam. And also, there's a couple other conditions for the person when he is being led by someone else. And of course, this person that is leading him needs to be someone who his salah is valid, of course. And so, like, there can't be like if this person is like his salah is invalid for a certain reason, then this person can't necessarily be led by someone that he knows that his salah is invalid. And of course, if there's a difference in opinions from like the different madhabs, say like a Hanafi has different things that break wudu than a Shafi'i, and so there's no problem with them being led by someone who maybe in their madhab they think that this person would their wudu is not valid, but in my madhab it is valid, or in this case there's no different like this is something that that there shouldn't be an issue with this at all. And if somebody does make this an issue, this is something that is breaking apart the Muslimin, and it's not permissible for someone to break apart the Muslimin because of their madhabs or and whatnot. As long as this person is making the salah in a way that's valid with the ulama that they're following, then this is something that is important. And so also the person who is the imam, he should not be like he's the imam, and the word imam means like that this is someone who's a leader or someone that's in front. And so like this person should always be in front, like the imam should be someone who is in front of the people that are being led, even if this is by a small amount. And so like we have like the heels of the person that's following the imam should never be in front of the imam. Like they shouldn't be in front of the heels of the imam. So we have the heels of the person who's being led and the heels of the imam. He should never be in front. And this is, we're looking at the heels, we're not looking at the toes. So maybe someone's like a little kid, or like they have smaller feet and they put the toes to the imam like this, their heels are in front of the imam. So their heels should be either equal, and this is okay, but it's best for it to be a little behind because the imam is supposed to be the one who's leading. And this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab, is that it's best for the person to be behind the imam just a little bit. So he should so there should be that, because the word imam itself has the intention that this person is someone who is in front, and he should always be in front. And if he ever is behind the person he's leading, then this person that he's leading his salah is invalid or invalidated. And so this is where he brings us, and of course, like this is something I added here, but it's something that's important for people to know. And also that the person, if he is being led by the imam, that he doesn't precede the imam and the takbiratul ihram. So when he says, when the imam says Allahu Akbar, if this person started saying Allahu Akbar while the imam was still saying Allahu Akbar, and this guy starts up while he's not finished yet, then this would be something that is not valid, because the imam, he doesn't officially start the salah until the end of Allahu Akbar, then he starts the salah. And so if someone starts to make him a leader before he finishes with the takbiratul ihram, then he hasn't even begun his salah yet to become a leader. So how can you make him a leader before that? So this person needs to wait until the imam is finished saying that, then he can say Allahu Akbar. But he needs to make sure that the imam says it completely before he starts saying it. And so the next thing that the author here, Abu Shujaa, he brings in, he says, وَيَجُوزَ أَنْ يَأْتَمَّ الْحُرُّ بِالْعَبْدِ وَالْبَالِغُ بِالْمَرَاهِقِ وَلَا تَصِحُّ قُدْوَةُ رَجُلٍ بِامْرَأَةٍ وَلَا قَارِئٍ بِأُمِّيٍ. So he says here that it's that it's permissible. First, it's وَيَصِحُّ وَيَجُوز. He says it's permissible for a free person to be led by a slave. And of course, this is when it comes to acts of worship, then there's no problem with that. And he also says, and for an adult, by someone that has not reached puberty yet. And also for so if you have like someone who is, of course, if a kid leads people in salah, this is permissible, and this happened at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, if it's a kid, it should be a kid who is mumayyiz, which means that he's not someone who's unaware, that he's not just like running around or not, but that he's actually like put together, he's responsible, that he has a sense of responsibility. He knows how to pray the salah, and then he knows how to make wudu, and he also like knows how to recite the Quran properly, or at least like the Fatiha. and the different parts of the prayer, he needs to know these things. So he needs to have like that basic knowledge of the prayer, and this is permissible. And he says here, marahak, which is like kind of like a preteen, like right before he reaches, right before the kid reaches puberty. But any kid who is aware and he's like knowledgeable and he's responsible to take care of his prayer, then if his prayer is valid for him, then it's valid for anyone who wants to follow him. And even though he's not held he's not at the age of accountability yet, it doesn't invalidate the fact that he can still lead someone. And of course, people should be mindful if someone is being led by like a kid, that the kid knows what he's doing. That he's not someone who is going to break wudu at the middle of the salah and doesn't know to get out, or something of this sort. Or that doesn't know how to read the Quran properly. And so he'll talk about this as well. And he says, but it's not permissible. And he says here, it's not permissible for a man to be led by a woman. And this is pretty like straightforward. And this is in general something that the ulama have agreed upon this in general, that the man is not to be led by a woman, and that the woman of course the woman should never be leading a man. And this is a very important principle here. And of course, it's not appropriate in many cases for a woman to be in front of the men in the prayer, and like the best of their, like for them, if they're ever praying together in the same prayer, then like the women, it's best for them to be behind the men. And of course, this is not distracting for them. And this is how it was prayed at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also a lot of times the masjids will have like a barrier, or like so where the men can't even see the women. And this is good, like taking into consideration the meanings of the Sharia. This is something that's good, of course, and as long as they can follow the things, then there's no problem for the women to be led by the men in the congregation if they are aware of the Salah. And he'll talk about a little bit more at the end of this chapter about where someone can be in the masjid for them to be led by Salah. And so this is, so he says here, it's not permissible for a man to be led by a woman. And it's also like there's hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, if someone like visits a people, then this visitor shouldn't lead these people in salah, but rather a man. He says here, rajul وَلْيُؤَمُّهُمْ رَجُلٌ مِنْهُمْ. And so like, of course, this is a rajul, which is a man, to lead them from them. And so this is of the hadiths that talk about this. And in general, there's no real difference of opinion that is looked at seriously in this issue. Of course, there's a statement here and there from a scholar here and there that have said things that have pointed to that there is some difference here, but this difference is not a difference that anyone looks to. It's something that is very, very, very weak, and that doesn't really hold any weight. And also it would maybe it's something to question the ijma' on this issue, but at the same time, like this is something that like the liberalists or like the feminists that try to infiltrate and try to say that it's okay for a woman to lead in salah. This is ridiculous, and like no like scholar or someone who is knowledgeable would ever even look at this with a serious mindset. And so then the next thing that he says here is also, or وَلَا قَارِئٍ بِأُمِّي. And so he says that it's not, or a person, he says it's not permissible for a man to be led by a woman, or a person that can recite the Fatiha correctly by someone who can't. And he says that's what qari'. Qari' means like a reader, bi-ummi, which is like someone who can't read. And what this is specifically, this is a term in fiqh, which means like someone who can read the Fatiha, or by someone who is ummi, which means he can't read the Fatiha properly, or he has mistakes in it. And so, like, of course, if someone is either a new Muslim, or they're not, they don't know very much, and they're very they haven't studied yet, then if they don't know how to read the Fatiha and they haven't had someone that has taught them yet, they should never be leading people in Salah. Like, this person should always have someone else who leads someone else in Salah. And if they're at the same level, then they're at the same level. They pray together. But the person who can recite the Fatiha properly and has like the proper ways of speaking it, he always needs to be the one. If he can't be led by someone who doesn't recite the Fatiha properly. As we mentioned before, the Fatiha needs to be recited like with all of its letters. Like its letters need to be there in the most part. And if there are like some little mistakes, this is something. But if he's changing letters with other letters, then this is a serious issue that that person should never be leading other people that can recite the Fatiha properly. And so this is, of course, this is one of the conditions for someone to be led by someone else, is that this person who's leading them is someone who can recite the Fatiha properly. As far as the rest of reciting the Quran, this is something that it doesn't invalidate the prayer necessarily from that, as long as the person's not changing things like when he's reciting purposefully. Of course, that's a whole other issue. And so this is the basic that he talks about here. And also now he's going to talk about the place that a person can be while being led by the imam. And I talked about that he never goes in front of the imam. But he says here, وَأَيُّ مَوْضِعٍ صَلَّى فِي الْمَسْجِدِ بِصَلَاةِ الْإِمَامِ فِيهِ وَهُوَ عَالِمٌ بِصَلَاتِهِ أَجْزَأَهُ مَا لَمْ يَتَقَدَّمْ عَلَيْهِ. And so here he gives a basic condition here, and he says, and any person can be led by the imam while in a masjid in any place, as long as he is aware of the prayer. This is the first thing. He needs to be aware of the parts of the prayer that the imam's in. So if the imam is in ruku', then he knows that the imam's in ruku'. Maybe this is because he sees him, or maybe it's because he sees the people who are following him, or because he hears his voice, or in this way. And so like even if he doesn't directly see him, he sees everyone else is making ruku'. Okay, this is fine. So even if he's not in a row and whatnot, then as long as he's in the masjid, he can pray at any place as long as he's aware of the prayer, and he doesn't precede the imam, which is the second condition, and we talked about this. And so as far as like someone being in a row by themselves when there's a row in front of them, this is something that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in an authentic hadith that there's no salah for the person lil munfarid, or like the person that is by himself behind the row. And so this is a hadith that is very clear that the person should always be in the, like if he's praying, and if he's praying with other people, then he needs to pray with the people in the row that they're at. But if the row is full and there's no room on this side, then this is something that, of course, this person is excused. And the Shafi'i madhab, they say that this la salat, like there's no salat, this means like he doesn't get the full reward from like looking at other evidences and whatnot. But in general, this person should be trying to make sure that he is with the rest of the people there in one of the rows. And of course, the rows shouldn't be super far apart. But if they are, it's still like, as long as they're in the masjid, if it's a masjid, as long as the person's in the masjid wherever he's at, it is fine for him to be led by the imam. As long as he knows where the imam's at in the prayer, he can follow along with the prayer, and he doesn't go in front of precede the imam, which means like he doesn't go in front of him, like in placement where he's standing. And so then the next thing that Abu Shujaa rahimahullah, he says, وإن صلى في المسجد والمأموم خارج المسجد قريبا منه وهو عالم بصلاته ولا حائل هناك جاز. So he says, with these conditions, he says, and for the one who's being led, it's permissible for the person to be led by the imam that's inside the masjid, that this imam is in the masjid, and the people following outside the masjid. So this person is outside the masjid following him. If, with certain conditions, they're somewhat close to the masjid. They can't be like super far away from the masjid or in a different building up in the, like they're totally disconnected from the masjid. Aware of the parts of the prayer, that he's aware of the parts of the prayer that the imam is going through, such as that he's in ruku' and whatnot, and there's no barrier stopping them from reaching the imam. So that the masjid has a door that's like propped open, like a door that is either wide open where you can see the people that are inside, which is good, or that the door is at least, it's opened somewhat and it's not like closed and shut from this person, because like the closed door is something that would like make the like the person, how can he needs to be able, like the madhab they'll talk about, he needs to be able to be, if he wants to reach the imam, there should not be any real barrier that stops him from reaching the imam. So if you have a masjid and all the doors are closed and he can't get in, if he wanted to, it doesn't mean that there's not security that are like stopping extra people from coming in, but that the masjid in general is open. Then this is something that as long as it's open, he can do that. But if it's closed, this is another story. He needs to either be inside or have the door open somewhat, even if it's just propped open. And this is, of course, there's a lot of like ijtihad that goes into this. And this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab here. And of course, they need to be somewhat close to a masjid. So if you have somebody who is, say, he's in his house, and he hears the adhan, or he hears like Jumu'ah going on, and then he wants to catch the rak'ah, and so he prays in his house because he can follow them. This this is separate from the masjid, and the doors, of course, are not open, and he's not there in a way where he is necessarily like close to that. So this is something that his salah would not be valid in following the people inside the masjid. And so if he's going to follow, he needs to make sure he has these conditions being made. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And so this is in general when it comes to the prayer in congregation. And of course, this is something that people should do their best to try to make sure that they pray in congregation with people. And also, there is an exception for the salat that would not be prayed with people. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Sallu fi buyutikum, fa inna afdal as-salati salatul mar'i fi baytihi illa al-maktuba." And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, to pray in your houses. And also in another hadith, he said, don't make your houses a graveyard. And so, because he says the best, here he says in this hadith, after salati, that because verily the best of salat is the salat of a person in his house, except for the obligatory salat. And so this is, if someone is praying the sunnah and whatnot, if they can pray this at their house, because, whether they're going back to their house and whatnot, then this is better for them to pray in their house. And of course, this is something that is good for the family as well. So if they have a family there and the man, he prays in the masjid, this is, of course, for the obligatory salat, this is good. But if he's going to pray the rest of like the rawatib, and these other sunnah salat, it's best for him to pray this in his house, so that his house gets a part of the blessing from the salat that he does, and also that the family sees him in salat as well. This is something that's good. Also for like kids to learn from their parents and know that salat is something that is a part of our daily lives, and this is something that inshallah will rub off on kids and whatnot when they see that their dad, yes, he goes out and he prays in the masjid, maybe they go with him, but he's praying in the house as well. So this gives a good atmosphere, and it shows that this is something that is a major thing of Islam. And this, of course, is the main pillar of Islam, is that prayer. And it's the difference between someone who is, like, it's the thing that separates us from the mushrikeen, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says in a hadith. And also, like, the best of masajid for someone to pray in is the one that has like the bigger group. So if you have a masjid that is a small masjid, or it's just like a few people, and then you have a masjid that has a lot more people, then normally like the people that there's a greater group, or like a bigger number in group, this is usually better, unless there's like some type of need, such as like this person is someone who is going to lead them in salah. So it'd be better for him, if they need someone to lead him, it's better for him to go lead them than to go into the bigger group. Or if the person in the bigger group is someone who is like a deviant, he's like calling people to misguidance, then it's better for him to go to a smaller one, as long as it's not like super far away or something of that sort. But it'd be better for him to go to like a smaller one. And of course, the salat behind someone who is deviant, then this is a salat that is valid. Like, there's no problem, as long as this person's a Muslim, and then the deviance is upon them. Like, this is not something that affects the validity of the salah and whatnot. Or the other scenario would be like if the bigger congregation, they delay the salah from its like preferred time to be prayed at the beginning of its time, then this is another exception for someone to pray in like a smaller group. If they're gonna pray it on at the beginning of its time, then to pray that. And of course this is talking about masajid. And also and the Prophet ﷺ, he says in another hadith that if the he says إذا مرض العبد, that if the worshipper or like the slave, he becomes sick or he goes on a journey, then it is written for him what he used to do from his actions when he was healthy and when he was a resident. So this is something that is a good thing for someone to understand, that if someone was used to go when they were healthy, they would go and they would pray in the masjid, and they would pray a lot of their extra sunnah prayers and whatnot. And while they were a resident, they would pray the sunnah prayers and they would do all these things. Then if for whatever reason something happened to them, they became sick or they went on a journey and then they had to, like, they weren't able to pray in congregation and they weren't able to pray all their sunnah prayers, then it's written for them as if they were in that other state. And this is a basic principle that a lot of the scholars have looked at, and they take it farther than just the things that are mentioned in this hadith. But they say, like, this person, if he's ever like prohibited from doing something that normally he was able to do and that he was always doing, then this is something that this thing that came up that stopped him from doing that thing doesn't stop him from getting the reward, because his intention was there and his actions prove that his intention was really there for that thing. And so Allah will keep giving him the reward for that thing, even though something else stopped him from that. Of course, so this is of the beauty of someone that prays in Salah, in the congregation, that they pray these things. And also this for like the extra prayers as well, this reaches that. And other acts of charity, say someone was giving charity and then all of a sudden they fall into like a hardship where they're not able to give charity like they used to. And this could probably be another place you could do qiyas and see that this person also would get that reward for what he used to do and he used to be consistent on it, but then something stopped him from doing that from some calamity. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And so these are a couple things in regards to the salah and congregation. And then the next thing that he's going to go into is shortening and combining the prayers. And so this next chapter, of course, there's two issues. There's one which is shortening the prayer, and there's also one which is combining the prayer. These are two different things. Sometimes they come together, and sometimes they can be done separately. And so, and another thing we'll talk about in this chapter is who is a resident and who is who is someone who is like on a journey, a traveler. Pardon me. And so he says here, فصل ويجوز للمسافر قصر صلاة الرباعية بخمس شروط. And so he says it's permissible for someone to like qasr is shortening. It's permissible for someone to shorten the prayers if 5 conditions are met. And this is the prayers, and he says for the musafir, which is for a person on a long journey, to shorten the prayers that are 4 rakats if 5 conditions are met. And so he's also going to talk about how long the journey is and a little things about the journey. And this is something for someone they should always be mindful of these conditions that we talk about here. As this will be very beneficial, as all of us, we travel sometime, and it's important for us to learn these things. And so he says the first of these 5 conditions is أن يكون سفره في غير معصية. And so the first of this is that the journey is not made to do something sinful. And so, of course, all of us are sinners and we will sin and make mistakes here and there, and no journey that we make will be free from mistakes. So this is not the intended meaning here. It's not that someone doesn't sin while they're on their journey, but rather that the journey itself is not a journey to sin. You know, like that this person, say, like he's going to Las Vegas to gamble. Like this is a journey. The reason he's going on the journey in the first place is for him to go gamble. Then this journey is not something that he's allowed to break his salah. All right, that he's allowed to like combine his prayers or to shorten them. This is not something that this journey is not even considered, because this is an allowance or a rukhsa, and the rukhsa is not given to people to do evil things. Like we're not like this is a rukhsa for someone while they're in their normal life, but like the Sharia doesn't give people a free card to go do evil. Of course, this takes away the meaning of this thing that someone would be going to do. This is, of course, for something that is permissible. But if this person is going to do something sinful, he's on his way to do something haram, or he's going to go steal something, or do something, or meet up with a strange woman or something of this sort. A'udhu billah. But if he's going to do these things, he can't take this rukhsa. He needs to make tawbah. Of course, he needs to make tawbah and whatnot. But he can't do this. He can't shorten the prayers, and of course, or combine them. If he's doing this to do something sinful, if that's the point of the journey. But if it's something that's permissible, or he's going sightseeing, going out in nature or something, of course there's no problem with that. And even if he does something sinful on the way, or he falls into something here and there, the point of the journey, if it wasn't to do sin, then it's okay. He can still he can still he can still combine the salah and make it short. And of course, he's talking first about shortening the prayers, which is a little more. There's more conditions for this. And so he says, the distance, the second of these conditions, he says, وَأَن تَكُونَ مَسَافَتُهُ سِتَّةَ عَشَرَ فَرْسَخًا. And so he says here, 16 farsakh. And of course, this is not a measurement that we use now, but he says the distance of the journey is to be 16 farsakh, and this is roughly 80. It's 81 kilometers, or 50 miles and 1/3. So 50 miles and 1/3. This is the way that people took it, as how much is this, and this is basically, when it comes to the actions of the Prophet ﷺ, when he broke his whenever he shortened the salah, he it was narrated that he shortened the salah, but what salah was it that he shortened? On what journey? And the journey that we have, that we know that he shortened it on, was something that had this distance. So this distance is the one that we know we're allowed to shorten it. As far as going in a shorter distance than this, we don't have any evidence that's clear that says we're allowed to shorten the prayer in this. So this is the way that the Shafi'i madhab, they looked and said this is rukhas. So because it's a rukhsa, or it's something that is made easy, we make sure that we're very careful when it comes to what we take from the Sharia, and when we're allowed to take this thing that's easy. So we know that this is what's narrated, that it was this amount of distance that he was traveling when he shortened the prayer. So this is the amount of distance that we make as a condition for that to be done. And so this is roughly about 50 miles. So if you know, and when it comes to this is something that before you're leaving, you're going to a specific place. You have a specific place in mind, and you know that your journey to that place is going to be 50 miles. And this is not round trip. This is one way. And so this 50 and 1/3, this needs to be done, and we're talking about one way. We're not talking about maybe I'm going on a day trip and I'm coming back and it's 25 miles there, or 26 miles and 26 miles back. So all of this it's got to be 50 miles to the place, because this is the way that it was narrated, that the Prophet ﷺ, when he did this, then it was at this length or distance. And so this is not, so we don't take them the round trip. And also the trip needs to be known before someone goes. They need to know how long the trip is that they're going on. If they're just wandering and they just want to go wander for a while, then this is not something that they get this thing just for wandering out in the middle of nowhere. But rather they need to have a point in there. They know where they're going, or they know where they're going in general, and they know how long that's going to be, so they know it's going to be this, so then they can shorten it. And also another key point that he doesn't necessarily mention here, but when can he shorten it? The time that he can shorten it is when he gets outside of the boundaries of the city that he's in. So once he starts traveling, so if there's a city that he's in, once he gets outside of where all of the buildings, so we'd say like, is it the city limits particularly, or is it like the buildings themselves? And it would be like the buildings themselves. When the buildings of the city, they break, and then there's like a wide open space. From this point of this wide open space that is broken away from the group of cities, or like the group of buildings that would be a part of like the Qaria or the Medina, or like the city itself, once you've separated from the buildings that are like the group of the city itself, then at this point, then you can break, then you can shorten the salah. But if you're still inside, even though you've intended to go outside, if you're still inside the city, you're still inside the city itself, and inside the buildings of that city, then you need to wait until you reach the edge of that city or the buildings of that city until you shorten the salah. And so, and there's a little difference between shortening the salah and combining the salah. And so if somebody wanted to combine the salah in this point, they can combine it, but they can't shorten it until they've left. If they know they're going on a journey and they want to pray before leaving, then they can combine the salah as four. Like they can combine it as it's full, but they don't shorten the salah, and they can do that. But they can't shorten the salah until they've actually reached the edge of the limits of the city, and then they can do that. And so then he says here, for the third of these conditions, and he says, وَأَن تَكُونَ مُؤَدِّيًا. He says, وَأَن يَكُونَ مُؤَدِّيًا لِلصَّلَاةِ الرُّبَاعِيَّةِ. And so that he says, if you're shortening it, it has to be a salah that is 4. It's of the salah that has 4 rakat. And so, of course, if it's a salah that is like 3, let's say just like Maghrib, we don't shorten it. We leave it just as it is. And also, if it's going to be like 2 rakahs, of course, it's not something that is shortened in any sense. And so this is the other condition, that it's something that is a 4 rakat salat, and so then it would be changed if someone wished that. And then he also says here, وَأَنْ يَنْوِيَ الْقَصْرَ مَعَ الْإِحْرَامِ. And so he says in that he makes the intention to shorten with the opening takbir. And when he says takbir, which is saying Allahu Akbar. So when he has this intention to start the prayer, he needs to have the intention that he's shortening it when he prays. He can't have the intention after he started the prayer. So it needs to be something that's at the beginning of the prayer, because it's the rukhsa, and he can't bring in this rukhsa midway. He needs to have it at the beginning. And so this is of the conditions here. And also that he is not being led. And he says here, وَأَنْ لَا يَأْتَمَّ بِمُقِيمٍ. And that he's also not being led by someone who is a resident. And so he needs to make sure that if he's being led in the prayer by someone who is a resident, or by someone who is finishing the prayer all the way, then he prays the prayer just as the imam is praying. So even if the imam is on the second, or the imam's on the last rakah, and he comes in and he wants to pray with the people, if he's praying with the imam that is praying full the full 4 rakat, then even if he only got in at the last rakah, if he took any part of this prayer with that imam, then he also takes the 4 rak'ah, and there's no shortening it after this. And this is what's narrated from Ibn Abbas, that this is the sunnah, and that he says that this is of the sunnah for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And for if a person is by himself, that he can shorten it, but if he's being led by someone who is muqim, that he prays it as 4. So this is of the other conditions that he mentions here. And also and also I added to these 5 conditions here, if you remember, that the person, if he's going to be shortening, that he leaves the buildings of the city that he's at. So if there's a wide open space between this city and the next city, when he gets apart from the buildings, then this is where he can do it, even if it's not the city limits and whatnot. This is not what we're looking at in regards to the Sharia. We're not looking at the city limits that are put around the city, but rather the buildings that are considered in the city. Whenever they stop, and then it's a wide open space before the next thing of buildings, then this is where this person can do that. And so, and also that he intends where he's going beforehand. And so the next thing he'll talk about is the combination. So we have shortening, which has like, these are the conditions for shortening that we mentioned here. And then there's also combination. And combination is a little more relaxed in the times that someone can do this. And so he says here, ويجوز للمسافر أن يجمع بين الظهر والعصر في وقت أيهما شاء. And so he says here that it's also permissible for a person on a long journey, to the musafir, to combine between dhuhr and asr in whichever of the two times he wants, and between maghrib and isha in whichever of the two times he wants. And so he can combine between these two prayers. And this is in general, these are the two that are combined. So he can, if he's praying dhuhr, then he can pray dhuhr in the time of asr, or he can pray asr in the time of dhuhr. Either time works for him if he wants to combine these things. And and it's also the same for maghrib and isha. But if someone is in the time of dhuhr and they want to say they want to pray in asr, they need to have this intention. And so if someone's going to pray at they're going to they're going to pray, they're going to delay the prayer, then they need to have the intention before the end of that time for them to pray that prayer. So this person is going through, say he's traveling from asr, and he's going to arrive to the destination he's going in isha. So he wants to delay maghrib. So when maghrib comes in, he needs to have the intention that he's going to delay the salah. If he doesn't have this intention that he's going to delay the salah, then it's as if he left the salah for this one, and he also then the salah would not be considered that he delayed it, but rather it'd be considered that he's making it up. That would be considered qada if he didn't have the intention during the time of maghrib to pray the salah after it, or to delay it because he's on the journey. So he needs to have that. And also for the person who's praying it earlier, there's a couple conditions for this person as well. He needs to have, there's 3 conditions that the author here doesn't mention them, but it's important. Is one, that he does it in order. So he can't put the asr before dhuhr or isha before maghrib. He needs to make sure that they're in order, as opposed to the person who prays it afterwards. So if he catches it, he could do it in the opposite order if he prays it in the second time. So one, it needs to be in order. This is if he's praying it early. He needs to make sure that the two are in order, and that he also has the intention. In the first salah, he needs to have the intention for jama'. He needs to have the intention for combining this prayer and the prayer afterwards. And then he also needs to have the prayers should be right after each other. There shouldn't be a delay between one prayer and the next. So say he prayed dhuhr, and then after an hour or so he wants to pray asr because it'd be convenient. The prayers need to be combined. And this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab, that when the Prophet ﷺ, he did this, he did it right away. So whenever he would combine the prayers, he would do it right away with just a very minor break between these two. And so these would need to be done in that way. As far as if someone is leaving it, or they're leaving to do it in the last time of the 2 times. So if they're delaying the prayer to the other time, then in this case they don't need to have this. Such as if they did it in the opposite order, say they came into the masjid and they made the iqamah, he's traveling, so he's still a traveler, but they made the iqamah for Isha. So he stands up, he prays Isha with the imam, no problem. And then afterwards he can stand up and pray Maghrib, no problem. Even though he changed the order, because this is the second he delayed it, there's no problem with the changing of the order. That's just only if he brought it before. And the same thing is if he delayed one time from the other time, there's no problem with that. Or if he didn't have the intention to do jama', no problem. This is because this is something that is that's delayed. So of course he still needs to pray it. He needs to pray it in that time. But if someone's going to pray it earlier, then there's a little bit more conditions that are met. Which of course the order needs to be met. If he's praying it earlier, the order needs to be met. He needs to have the intention during the first salah, and he also needs to do them one after another without a break in between. And so the next thing that he'll talk about here, when it comes to the prayers, is he says, وَيَجُوزُ لِلْحَاضِرِ فِي الْمَطْرِ أَنْ يَجْمَعَ بَيْنَهُمَا فِي وَقْتِ الْأُولَى مِنْهُمَا. And so he says, and it's permissible for someone who is someone not traveling to combine them in the first of the 2 times during the times of rain. And so this is, so if there's a time of rain, so it's raining outside, and this person, like, of course, going to the masjid at a time of rain, maybe it's a hardship on that person, and of course, like, areas where there's not like roads and like a nice like sewer system and whatnot that can make sure that the roads aren't getting flooded, then it could be very hard for someone. When it rains just a little bit here in Egypt, sometimes the roads will become mud, and so like this becomes a hardship for people. And this was also at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that whenever it would rain, a lot of times they would have a adhan. They would have an addition to the adhan, like sallu fi rihalikum, and so like to pray in your homes. So that wouldn't become a hardship on the people. Of course, this is something that Islam comes in and makes things easy for people, and it doesn't make things hard on people in this very, very hard way. And so this is if there is like a rainy day, and the same thing like this would be like snow or like hail or other type of hardship in precipitation, then this is something that it's okay for someone to pray both of the prayers, and this is like praying it early to combine the prayers in the time of the first one of the 2 times during the times of rain. And of course, this is while if it's still raining, and if the rain ends, then this would end according to the madhab. And of course, like if there's still like snow out and there's rainy conditions and whatnot, this is something I don't know the answer for this in particular. But if it's raining, then the madhab is that while the precipitation is coming down, if they pray this and then it ends after they finish their prayer, then as long as they prayed it while the precipitation was happening, then their prayer is fine. And they prayed this before its time, and so then they don't have to pray it afterwards. And also just another note when it comes to someone who is traveling, because we'll come back to this later, is that the person, when does their traveling end? Like, so they're traveling to Medina. When does that traveling, and they're going to be there for like a longer period of time, more than 4 days. If their traveling time ends when they arrive at the destination. So once they arrive in the city, then this is when their traveling ends. And also, how many days can someone stay into a place for them to be considered and still be considered a traveler? Then this would be 4 days. So you have 4 days, not including the days of arrival and the day of leaving. So like the day of arrival and the day of leaving, you don't count this as a part of the day. And of course, the days, they start with the night in Islam. So it'd be like the night. And the night starts at like from Maghrib to the next Maghrib. This is 1 day. And so this is 4 days. So if you're staying in a place for 4 days, and this is not including, so after you take the day of the arrival, you take this out of the picture, and then you're staying for 4 days. And then you take the day of leaving, you take this out of the picture as well. So you have just these 4 days, and you have a day of arrival, and you have a day of departure after these 4 days. If you have 4 days, then this is muqim. And this person is a resident if he knows that time. If he doesn't know the time, say he's trying to get something done, but he doesn't know when this thing is going to get done, or he's looking for something, he's trying to do something, and he doesn't know how long it's going to take, then he's a traveler until like 18 days have come. After 18 days, then he is no longer a traveler, but rather he is a resident. And this is the standard view in the madhab that is relied upon. And this is like 18 days, then he can be a traveler if he doesn't know, like he doesn't have an end goal, or he has a goal in mind, but he doesn't necessarily have an end time that is prescribed yet. And so this is how that would work for that person in that time. Also, we'll talk about fasting. It's permissible for someone when they're fasting to break their fast while they're on one of these longer journeys. But for the person who's able to fast, it's better for them to fast while they're on that journey. This is, of course, in regards to Ramadan. If they're on a journey and they can fast and they're able to do this, it's better for them to fast. And this is for the person that is not like worn out terribly because of fasting on the journey. And of course, these days sometimes like fasting on a journey it's kind of easier because we don't necessarily have the same like riding of horses and whatnot. That would be something that's very hard. والله تعالى أعلم وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.